before as it's now. Right? If the sprout and the seed were identical, well, the seed didn't change. The sprout would still be the seed, and so it would be permanent. If it existed totally separate from it, well, how can something come into existence totally independent of something else? Right? If it existed totally separate from its cause, the seed, for instance, wouldn't have any influence on the sprout coming into existence. So it wouldn't exist. How could the sprout come into existence? It was totally separate from the seed, in a sense independent of the seed, so it can't come into existence. So it would totally be non-existent. See this kind of logic? I know it's overwhelming, but the Oscar. I'm kidding, but this is so difficult. So never mind if you get 10%, that's okay. Don't expect to understand everything. It's like you hear it for the first time, and you hear it once again, and every time you hear something more. So this is true for you, and it's true for me as well. Okay? This is totally normal. And I'm just going through what we did before, and I have to do it quickly because we don't have that much time to go through everything. So here then it says, well, this is nectar. It doesn't feel like nectar. But it's the doctrine of the Buddha. This is nectar. So the Buddhas are basically the protectors of the world because they protect us from our misapprehension by teaching us that. Once we understand it, this misapprehension can disappear in our exaggerated worries and all that. They will disappear. And that's true freedom. Understanding that things are not identical, not different, not annihilated, not permanent in the way we expressed before. It could be absurd. Totally identical, totally separate, that doesn't make sense, and therefore totally non-existent or always the same. It's not like that. Those are just extremes. And when fully enlightened Buddhas, so this is what Buddhism explains, this is what the Buddha is all about, and even if the Buddha is no longer around, and his teachings are no longer around, when the Shravakas who receive teachings from the Buddhas, if they're no longer around, will there always be the solitary realizers, the Pratyeka Buddhas. They'll always be around, so don't worry. Even if the Buddha is long gone, you can always get an understanding of that. That's basically what it says. Right? So this chapter was just saying, our main problem is our misarrangement of the self, but analyze it, and you won't find it. It's difficult, the analysis is difficult, but if anyone can at some point understand that, it's not impossible to understand, you can't find that self. These are the absurdities. If it existed in the way it appears to us, it'll either be totally non-existent or it'll be always the same. It couldn't arise from causes and conditions. It would never exist or be the same as its cause. So these are all some of the absurdities. Therefore, once we understand that, we're truly free. Does that make sense? Okay, this was the speed explanation of chapter 18. Now I'm thinking, I'll take some questions, but allow me to go a little bit into 23, because 23 is even harder. It's even harder. Well, now it looks at the different afflictive emotions. How do they exist? Because the funny thing is, our mind, alright, no tables no longer exist so truly, and maybe the I and all that seems a little bit less solid as before. But now to our mind, the misperception, misapprehension, that's more real. Anger is more real. We spend more time on it, right? It becomes more real. Now, attachment, aversion, confusion, so do they exist intrinsically? Because from what I've said so far, all our experiences are basically reflections of our mind. Our reality, and that is totally true from this point of view, our reality is a reflection of our mind. That's why we can be in the same kibbutz. One person loves the food and the other one hates it. Right? So, because the reality of one person is not the same as the other. They may eat the same tomatoes, not exactly the same, but they basically eat the same food, but one hates it, so for one person that's a reality, for the other one it's a reality. So what is it? Well, it's both. From the perspective of this person is this, from the perspective of that is something else. So from a point of view, reality is just a summary of everyone's experience, and that is totally subjective. There's nothing objective there. Right? What is that objective? Like, no one experiences it. How can we say it even exists? It's totally subjective. Heat and cold are great examples. We say fire is hot. Well, but only if you experience heat with the body. If you had a kind of body that would be cold, close to fire, then fire would be cold in relation to that person. Right? So is this room warm or is it cold? For me, it's really warm. I've learned my lesson. I've got summer clothes and I've got winter clothes with me for every retreat, because I'm always too warm, right? I've got both here. So, but you're probably saying it's cold, right? So what is it, cold or hot? Cold. Well, in relation to you it's cold, in relation to me it's hot. It's both hot and cold. How is that possible? Hot and cold, it's both. Because hot and cold are not objective. It's in relation to your body, it's hot. In relation to mine, it's cold. And that's true for everything, everything. And who says it? Albert Einstein. Relativity. Right? It's all relative. It's in relation to something else. So, but it seems absolute to be this, that, and the other. Alright? Okay. Now, when we talk about these afflictive emotions, attachment, aversion, confusion, but of course, they're also just labeled. They're states of mind. So even though everything exists subjectively, even that subjective mind doesn't exist in and of itself. It is just, again, dependent on something other than itself. Alright, so, what does it say here? Attachment, aversion, confusion, they arise from labeling independence on pleasant, unpleasant, and wrong perceptions. So ignorance, wrong perception, we make an error, it depends on that, ignorance arises. Independence on something pleasant, that we label pleasant, then attachment arises. And independence on something unpleasant, aversion arises, right? So again, it depends on other things. In relation to other things, it becomes this, that, and the other. In and of itself, it's none of those. There's always things long and short. If you didn't have short, you couldn't have long. If you didn't have something pleasant, you couldn't have attachment. Alright, and so forth. Then likewise, so if it exists in dependence on something else, if aversion and so forth, they exist in dependence on other things, how can they exist in and of themselves? How can they be inherently this, that, and the other? Inherent basically means it's in their nature. You don't need anything else to be like that. Right? But there's nothing in their nature because it depends on so many other things. And so, also there's no one to have anger and attachment because that self cannot be found. Right? So we talk about these afflictive emotions, these negative emotions, as someone having them. That person cannot be found. So if there's no one to whom they can belong, with anyone to belong to, there cannot be any afflictions like negative emotions that belong to this person and that person. So you see what Nagarjuna is doing? He's kind of like pulling the rug underneath our feet. What seemed previously so clearly delineated is this, is that. This is a good person, that's a bad person. I'm good, you're bad. I'm important, you're not, right? Our view of reality. Well, if that view of reality we have really existed the way it appears to your mind, let's look for it. And confusion arises. Because it's like, what? Right? That's a good confusion. The confusion you experience right now, it's kind of like, what? No, right? Because it's, on one hand, the mind still holds on to things existing that way, and the other one's saying, yeah, I kind of get it. And those two kind of like have like a struggle in it. But he's just looking at it from all aspects. And actually, and we'll do this with the following verses, we need to meditate on this. Slowly focus on that, and not just listen, but we've done that last year, so those verses we won't be meditating on the ones that come, but I'll try to bring in some of the things that are addressed here. So if the pleasant, unpleasant, and error do not exist inherently, so again, the afflictions depend on pleasant, unpleasant, and erroneous, like mistaken, but they also don't exist exist in and of themselves. They again exist in relation to a certain body, in relation to a certain culture, in relation to what I think is beautiful. Depends on so many aspects. If I was raised in a certain culture, I may like this music, not like that music, right? Depending on my body, depending on my size, depending on so many factors, I perceive something as pleasant or unpleasant. So my anger, my attachment don't exist in and of themselves because they depend on pleasant things, unpleasant things. But then they are also not in and of themselves pleasant. They again depend on other things. So that pleasantness cannot be found, in other words. Cannot be found. Why? Because also the objects cannot be found. What is the blue? I think is so pleasant. It's light waves, certain, like a retina that perceives things in a certain way, and a consciousness perceives it that way. There is nothing in and of itself blue. If I call blue pleasant, again, the objects don't exist inherently. See? So, from all sides, whatever we believe there to be truly there, then you take this aspect, you take this aspect, and you can never really find anything. And you may wonder, to conclude this before I take your questions, so you may wonder, well, big deal. But the thing is, it is a big deal. Because we need to recognize that it's our solid way of looking at this world. It is just a way of looking at reality which has no grounding in reality. It's not as solid as it is. It totally depends on our mind. So that gives us a lot of freedom, because our mind creates reality. And if you learn to create it in the right way, well, we can develop love instead of hatred. We can develop satisfaction instead of attachment and dissatisfaction and so forth. All right. You had a question.
So, I'm trying to take everything that you said and translate it to reality in Israel as it is today.
Mm-hmm.
So what you actually say is that if I decide that Bibi Netanyahu is a great person,
Mm-hmm.
I can be very satisfied living with
Mm-hmm. No.
So
I didn't say that.
Can you repeat?
I repeat the question. She's saying that the way I described how we create reality, that would mean I could decide Bibi is a great person and be really happy living in India, in Israel. Right? All right. This is very interesting because you've done something that we naturally do as a result of hearing about it. Going into another extreme. One extreme is things are solidly, Bibi is solidly in and of itself horrible, this, that, and the other, unchangingly, etc. On the other hand, he can be anything because he's neither. Right? No, that's another extreme. In the sense that this is where the middle way comes in. And this is a very normal reaction because previously we have a sense Bibi is just in and of himself a bad person. And so if I say, well, but not in and of himself, then he cannot exist at all as that. Even conventionally, it would not be all right, because to be this, that, and the other, it can only be so inherently. So it's a very natural reaction that you just had. Now, when I say things are merely labeled, I'm not saying merely made up. You need a basis of imputation. You need a basis for saying this, that, and the other. Now, I'm not saying that what Bibi does is not harmful, that it's not corrupt, I don't know.
But even him.
Pardon?
But even Bibi, some people think he's doing
Good things?
good things. Some people think it's exactly like hot and cold.
Yes, so, very good. As you just mentioned, one of my teachers, he once did something to me in class. Okay. He said to me, I was translating for him. He said to me, the Buddha was bad. I was like, what? He's like, translate that. Are you sure? I was like, yes, the Buddha was bad. People were like, whoa. Anger is good. Whoa. But that time I gave up, I never asked her. I was like, did I understand? Yeah, just translate. Okay. So Buddha is bad, anger is good. And so when love is bad, arrogance is good. So then he said Buddha was bad because he harmed something. He harmed something. What did he harm? He harmed negative emotions. He harmed negative emotions, therefore the Buddha is bad. Now, if I liked negative emotions, I would say the Buddha is bad because he harmed something that I like. Anger is good because it gives me something. It gives suffering. It benefits suffering. It reinforces suffering. So if I wanted suffering, then it's in relation to what I want. And BB is a good example. If I want certain things that BB does, and he does them, he benefits those things, I say BB is good. If he destroys certain things that I don't like, then I say BB is bad. But if it's the other way around, if the things that BB does, I don't like them, right? So he benefits things that I don't like, then I say BB is bad. And the only reason we say the Buddha is bad, the Buddha is good, is because it gives us the thing we want. We want happiness. If we didn't want happiness, so we're all the same that we want to be happy, or we want to be satisfied. So we would all agree the Buddha or Nelson Mandela or Gandhiji, etc. They were all talking about things that benefited the things we wanted, which means happiness. They taught us means, but because we're just so similar in that case. However, in relation to politicians, here, well, if they give everyone happiness, everyone would say they're good, but because in relation to what I want, they give that to me, so they're good. If you believe in I don't know much about politics, but I don't know what BB does, but settlements, for instance, if you believe in the settlements, you think they're good, and BB creates more settlements, well, then you say he's good. If you don't believe in them, he's bad. So it's always in relation to what you want. Wouldn't you agree? And you said it exactly. Otherwise, if you were inherently good or bad, you wouldn't be all disagreeing. Right? What is it? 2 Israelis, 3 opinions? Okay? So we wouldn't all be disagreeing. The reason being that we all have different things we want, different views on what's good or bad. I mean, you're multicultural coming together, with many different cultures coming together. So obviously, different opinions coming together. So it makes total sense that different views on things. Right? But all I'm trying to say is, good or bad is always in relation to this, that, and the other. And it comes down to what you want. So it's subjective. So it doesn't make him good or bad. It depends on, but if we all want happiness. Let's say.
But I'm still suffering.
Yes, you still
I'm
suffer.
suffering. So if I wake up tomorrow morning and I say to myself, the settlement's so wonderful.
Pardon?
The settlement's so wonderful. I will stop suffering.
Right, of course.
Then I will not act to stop what I initially thought was wrong. So I don't get this. I really don't.
Oh, okay. So the main question is, how do we get from A to B, or from A to E? What's the whole point?
Love what is.
So what's the whole point? Anyone? What's the whole point? Her point is, now I'm taking her side. I'm debating with her. So she's saying, all right, I know, I may have understood BB is not good or bad, it depends on me, but I still suffer. What is all this? Get rid of ignorance, get rid of suffering? No, it doesn't work. All right. That's my debate. I took on her debate. We're together now, debating against you now.
Okay, so I say you suffer because of BB, is your suffering in any way changes what is happening at the moment? If you're going to suffer, is BB going to stop being Prime Minister? No.
Okay, so she's saying, let me just repeat it. So she's saying, is your suffering directly related to BB? if Bibi were gone, would your suffering be gone? So if you believe your suffering comes from Bibi, killing Bibi, your suffering would be gone. No, I'm not saying, I shouldn't say that, but you know, if Bibi was now suddenly gone, right, Bibi was gone, then would your suffering be gone?
If he wasn't Prime Minister, probably.
Will your suffering be gone?
Well, I'm suffering.
But a certain type of suffering. Okay, so she's saying, life would be better. Not be perfect, but be better.
Yeah, could be worse.
Nagarjuna, yes?
There's a situation that I cannot change. Doesn't matter. Okay, Bibi is gone. Okay, let's say Bibi is gone, but Gans isn't very better than him, and he does a lot of stupid things as well. And I know he's suffer again. And then I say no, but we need to change. So it's a never-ending battle between how is it going to be the perfect situation for me to be happy. So I can start by changing the Prime Minister and really fight to change my suffering, but I need to also focus that why does the fact that he's a Prime Minister affect me so much as to call it suffering? You know what I mean?
Okay.
Listen, I can disconnect myself from this suffering. I do this every 4 years, 3 years, whatever. You know, I disconnect from the suffering.
Yeah.
But if I don't feel anything, how am I going to make a difference?
All right.
You see, how's the Dalai Lama making a difference to for the battle for Tibet?
Okay. Now, where are the oldest students? Where are the oldest students? I don't know, Nagarjuna, but you wanted to say something. Go ahead.
I said that the first classic idea of Buddhism is that nothing in the outer world will satisfy us.
Nothing in the outer world will satisfy us. Okay.
Ever.
Ever. Okay.
It's always changing. It's always unsatisfactory. It's always pleasant and unpleasant and neutral. So we have to change ourselves. We have to find the inner peace within ourselves, no matter what the outer circumstances are.
All right. So, what Nagarjuna, I call him that's his Tibetan name. I can remember that name better. So, what Nagarjuna is saying, he's saying that actually, from a Buddhist point of view, what you're addressing is finding happiness in the external. But it's saying, actually, from a Buddhist point of view, no matter what the external is, you can only be happy if you find happiness from within.
I agree.
Okay.
I agree, but one day that cause of unhappiness is knocking on my door.
Say it again.
I can be content and happy. I have a roof over my head. I have food to eat. I have my family around me.
Okay.
One day, the cause of my sort of unhappiness that I can neutralize is going to come knocking on my door. Because one day, there's a lot of foods. Because one day, somebody's going to take me to court because I said something that regime did not like,
Okay.
and they're going to put me in jail.
But if you're internally happy, who cares?
Yeah, exactly.
So I'm going to be in jail and happy.
Yes, you can be anywhere if you're going to be happy.
I doubt that very much.
It's a work.
Yes. Okay. Let's leave it at that. So, this is.
Why do we go to vote if that's the case?
Pardon?
Why do we vote? No, why do we vote?
Why do we vote?
Why don't we just accept things as they are and be happy within our inner selves and not go to vote?
Well, that's great. That's really good. This is an important question. So, what happens when you're on a plane? What do they tell you when you're on a plane? In the unlikely event of cabin pressure, loss of cabin pressure, a gas, like oxygen mask will drop from the ceiling, put it on yourself, and then put it on others. That seems pretty selfish, right? But you have to put it on yourself first, and then you can help others. So the whole idea in Buddhism is you look for inner peace, but you don't ignore everyone else. So the idea is to find happiness within problems, because understanding that a problem is only a problem when you call it a problem. If you call it a challenge, right? And there have been tests on that, where two groups of people, there was a TED talk on that once, so maybe this is an example that works well. There was two groups of people where that undergo a lot of stressful activities. One group called it challenge. It was a challenge, it was something to grow, etc. The other group called it stressful. And before long, you can imagine the result. So if things are neither good or bad, it depends on how we look at them, well then, I can utilize it in a way that I'm satisfied with what I have and be peaceful. But I'm still active because not everyone feels that way. I mean, we still have a responsibility to vote, etc. in the sense that we are part of society where people still suffer because of this, that, and the other. So the idea is, and this is far away, I'm talking about not like tomorrow. I go to a Buddhist course today, tomorrow my problems are solved. That's no way that's going to happen. That's like starting yoga today and tomorrow you can put your feet behind you. It takes months, it takes years, even longer. The point is here that finding that sense of satisfaction by understanding the way we believe things, this is good, this is bad, out there, it just comes from our mind. Seeing that everything is relative. And once you do that and you feel that you get that sense of satisfaction, you still need to be active in society because there are endless people, endless living beings suffering, and we have a responsibility within this society to bring more happiness, to work for peace, etc. Until people, of course through our own example, possibly through teaching, etc., we can help others to reach that same state, and those problems won't arise. Yes?
I want to ask, it's becoming harder and harder to speak because even the words, like I feel that the suffering is because I want this way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think Bibi is wrong.
Mm-hmm.
I think Bibi is right. So for me, it's happiness. Like, and we see it in Israel before Begin was elected. Everybody says he's a terrorist, he's a killer, he's a. And now he's maybe the most the best.
Okay.
Yeah, but he was really, really good.
Mm-hmm.
So it's only because I think I'm right and my righteousness is I'm ready to, I don't know what to do, only to be right. So this is why I suffer, because as long as I think that my opinion has to be the opinion, or everybody has to vote like in this, like me, that's why I'm suffering. This is one, this is the main causing thing. And the other one is, like you said, the happiness is not in the chocolate, because if I eat more and more, so if Bibi is not elected, next 2 weeks, so it's a day of really, really great happiness, and then it's the same.
Mm-hmm.
Other things make me suffer.
Mm-hmm.
My husband leaves, the weather is anything, as long as it depends. And I think...
But you're still talking about finding happiness in external things.
Yeah.
Because of we want it to be a certain way, the weather, and if it doesn't come that way, so we believe happiness comes from the weather. If the sun shines, I'm happy because there's something intrinsically pleasant in the weather. But again, we depend on things that we cannot control. That's the problem. Yes?
Sometimes when I drive in Tel Aviv, I read about Lama Zota's meditation about emptiness.
Yes.
You see shapes,
Yes.
and you project your meaning on them,
Yes.
and try to see the emptiness of
Mm-hmm.
the three spheres.
Mm-hmm.
And I drive around Tel Aviv, and I drive the next day, and the next day. The buildings are the same.
Mhm.
Sometimes it's cloudier,
Mhm.
sometimes it's less.
Mm-hmm.
And it always kind of triggers my mind. What's the continuation of my projection that I see the same buildings,
Mm-hmm.
3 days apart, 2
Mhm.
weeks apart.
Mhm.
I go to Italy, and I come back, and the buildings are the same. I know they're not the same.
Mm-hmm.
But how do I project the same images? I'm just
Mhm.
curious.
Okay, so So how come you have the same thoughts in relation to those objects, although intellectually you know they cannot be the same? Is that your question?